It's good to see all of you tonight. Appreciate your presence. We've got a good group tonight. Most of us beginning to be sort of semi-healthy. Bill says Jan's doing a little better. I want to talk with you. The title of this sermon's Building for the Ages. And it's about Jacob's well. Something you all ought to be familiar with in the scriptures. The account is in John 4 in the first 14 verses. Let's read. Therefore, we knew that the Pharisees said that Jesus had more disciples than John. Himself is coming on over there. Okay. Should I wait a minute? Is it coming up? Not yet. Is it praying over the matter? Okay. Though Jesus himself did not baptize, but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again to Galilee. But he needed to go through Samaria. So he came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour. The woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The woman of Samaria said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, asketh a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? The Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." Jesus answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well, drank from it himself, as well as his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered and said to her, "Whosoever drinks of this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water, springing up into everlasting life." Most of what we have, we received by virtue of inheritance. We received our mannerisms. Sort of copied our mom and dad on that. We scratch our head the same way. We walk oftentimes the same way, gesture the same way. The results of our training and habits, our appearance, our material things. We can blame our parents and ancestors for much of that. Have sons who've decided they're going to be great in the NBA, but they didn't get those tall genes, so they're going to be the shortest player in the NBA if they make it, which is not very realistic. Or if you're bald, you get to blame your mom for that one and several other traits. We all inherit these things, our material things. Did mom and dad leave us anything, any money or anything? Proverbs 22 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it." So much of what you are, you received as a result of training when you were younger. 2 Corinthians 12, "The third time I'm ready to come to you, and I will not be burdensome to you, for I seek not yours, but you, for the children ought to lay up for the parents, but the parents for the children. And I will very gladly spend and be spent for you, that the more abundantly I love you, the less I be loved." So our parents, many of them have saved and provided, saw to your education, saw to your welfare, left you perhaps houses and money in their wills, and provided for you throughout their life as best they could. You've received all of it by inheritance. So that in reality, Jacob's well was a symbol of the life of Jacob. What sort of person was he? What had he been taught, and how had he lived? You know, Jacob's work has endured. We see things around this country, our monuments. We see the Washington Monument. We see up in the Dakotas, we see those big statues carved in a mountain of the presidents. We see Stone Mountain in Georgia that they're threatening to blow up. And all of those have endured for a while. I don't know how long they endured. I don't know what it'll say about folks. I think of a poem. I thought of it just a moment ago, one of those ready recollections by Shelley. The poem was Ozymandias, which you should have studied in high school and may not have. Shelley said, I met a traveler from an antique land who said, two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survived, stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them, the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty and despaired. Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck. Boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Maybe some of our monuments are like that. They may last for a few years and be gone. That big statue up in New York, the Statue of Liberty, will be gone someday. We erected those two massive monuments of skyscrapers. Lo and behold, they're gone now. But Jacob's work has endured. It's endured throughout the years. His work was a reflection of his character. That 4,000 years of his work has endured. He could have built more cheaply. Didn't have to build it as well as he built it. For instance, this is from Easton's Bible Dictionary. It says this is one of the few sites in Palestine about which there is no dispute. It was dug by Jacob, and hence its name, in the parcel of ground which he purchased from the sons of Hamor. It still exists, although after copious rains it contains a little water. It is now usually quite dry. It's at the entrance to the valley between Ebal and Gerizim, about 2 miles southeast of Shechem. It's about 9 feet in diameter and about 75 feet in depth. Though in ancient times it was no doubt much deeper, probably twice as deep. The digging of such a well must have been a very laborious and costly undertaking. I have watched men dig and dig. It's scary thing. My goodness, it was scary to death. But 150 feet deep is pretty far down. But that work has endured. You didn't have to dig a well at all. This is from the ISBE. He says the Old Testament says nothing of this. With the copious springs at Ein Askar and Balatai, one may ask why a well should have been dug here at all. Why do you need a well? We must remember that in the East, very strict laws have always governed the use of water. Same sort of thing, by the way, is true of our West, especially when there were large herds to be considered. The The purchase of land here may not have secured for Jacob such supplies as he required. They may have sold him a bare piece of ground with no water on it. That would be typical. What's he going to do? How do I get water? Well, they would have charged him for every sheep that drank out of the neighboring water source. There was a danger of strife between rival herdsmen. The patriarch, therefore, may have dug the well in the interest of peace to preserve his own independence. He didn't have to depend on anybody else for water. And as a result of that, his work has endured. Didn't have to dig a well, but he did. He wanted to be peaceful. He wanted to be independent. He didn't want to fight with his neighbors. He certainly didn't want to pay them for water. So it was altogether probably a reasonable thing to do. Often, the enduring work is a reflection of a greater wisdom than the builder. Maybe his parents taught him how to get along in life. His teachers, our teachers, elders of the church, giving us some direction and guidance. Preacher, neighbors, helping us out, telling us how to get along in the world that we live in and what we should do and how to get by. You know, there's some people who never ask for advice, so they're going to suffer the consequences of where you live and how you survive. If you're going to move a trailer into the Florida Keys, you better have a plan B. So I think we proved that this week. You might talk to the neighbors and say, look, in case the storm comes, what should I do? Get some advice. They'll know what you need to do and can help you about that. Spiritually, you know, I've seen a lot of people who try to go it on their own, asking no advice. How do I raise my kids? How do I get along in my employment? My wife and I are having trouble. We're just going to fight it out ourselves. And they won't go to anybody else for just a little bit of advice as to how to get by. Matthew 7. Whoever hears these sayings of mine, Jesus says, and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. You know, where do I build my house? The rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house. It did not fall. It was founded on the rock. Oh, I probably have told you this story, but years ago when I was 13, my dad was preaching in Birmingham, Alabama. And the church down there, in their wisdom, had provided a place to live. They bought a house. Bought property, actually, first, I think, built a house. But then they discovered something. The house was basically built on a ravine. Big drop off. And the builder had just dumped dirt in that thing until it looked level. And then the trees that were on the property, he cut them off about this high, so they looked like stumps. Instead, that tree was 20 feet down. And then the brethren, beginning to build their house on this fine piece of level property, began to search for a foundation. Lo and behold, there wasn't one. And so they had to do some fairly difficult things in order to establish a foundation for that house. And it still floated a little bit, cracked here and there. Maybe they should have asked some of the neighbors, did you see him dumping a lot of dirt over here before we bought this? They might have spoken to them. But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man. Built his house on the sand, and the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell. Great was its fall. Jacob had learned some lessons. so that his work could endure. The question arises, have you learned some lessons? Have you learned to listen to the Lord, to build on the rock? You know, here you are, you're in school, you're learning to develop yourself, educate yourself. Have you educated yourself about the Lord, or are you getting all your education from TV? It's a good question. You're about to get married. Have you educated yourself about what's really important in a marriage? Your relationship with the Lord. Have you heard his sayings and doing them so that your house is built on a rock, so that when the difficult times come, and they will come, your house will stand because it's founded on a rock. You know, I'm going to tell you one more story while I'm here. My uncle, Katrina, that's 2 hurricanes ago, 2 big hurricanes ago, he had a house, still has, in near Gulfport, Mississippi. Katrina hit. The house was a block and a half from the beach. Okay. Came through Camille. Now Katrina hit. He was up in northern Mississippi when it hit. They kept looking for what in the world had happened to their house. Because everything else, they were looking, you know, at the TV reports and the helicopters flying over, taking pictures. Everything else was wiped out. The whole block that stood before him. My uncle now has a house on the beach, but his house was built of brick. Good, solid brick. Now, the water all shoved through the door, and there was a couple of boats back in his swimming pool that weren't there originally, and a lot of other stuff. But the house stood because he had invested the money originally to build it solid, and everybody else had built that frame construction that washed away. Have you based your life on the Word of God? Because when the trouble comes, trouble with your kids, trouble with your family, trouble with your wife, trouble with your husband, have you based your life on the Word of God? That's where the rock is. Jacob's work endured. But in addition, let's move on. One of the things that's remarkable about Jacob is he thought about the future. So many people don't think about the future. They're only thinking about today. What's important today? And so you wake up on Monday morning, you're a little tired and grumpy. Your friend calls and says, let's go out and party. And because you're only thinking about today, you go. You don't remember that payday is coming. Lo and behold, you're going to miss that day's pay. And your boss may not be too thrilled with the idea that you're spending all day Monday leaving him short-handed. But you know, there's an enormous number of people that think that way. They don't think about tomorrow, just today. There's no planning for the future. But Jacob thought about the future. A lot of people spend all their time living in the past. As I get older, I do. It's not very wise. In Ecclesiastes, say not thou, what's the cause that the former days were better than these? And I've heard you people saying this. I'm not going to point any fingers, Kathy or Louise, but a lot of you and me have been known to say, oh, Rita, things were good back in the days when I was young. The world today is just going to hell in a handbasket. What is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this. Weren't there any sinners when we were young? Weren't there any evil people? Wasn't there any unrest in the world? Some of you people came through the Second World War, for goodness sakes. Wasn't there any evil in the world that needed to be combated? Our children will face the same thing. Was there any unrest in the good old US of A back during the Depression? Oh, yes, there was. Riots, bread lines. You remember those things. Communism coming into the country. We were worried about it. Now, we do the same thing. You're not inquiring wisely, he says. Quit living in the past. Think about the future. A lot of people only live in the here and now. He spake a parable unto them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. He thought within himself, saying, what shall I do, because I have no room where to bestow my fruits? And he said, this will I do. I'll pull down my barns and build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. God said unto him, thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. I have seen men who have spent their whole life amassing money, and they're good at it. Money's really fairly easy to come by. If that's what you're dedicated to, you can come by money. You pile it up, you get the education, you get the good job, and you pile it up, you got the house and the houses and the cars. And what was he not thinking about? He wasn't thinking about the future. He thought he had it made now. He could just sit back, put his feet up, and coast. Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then who shall those things be which thou hast provided? Maybe you haven't been thinking about the important things. So is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. And some people imagine a very unrealistic future. They haven't thought it through. You know, there's a lot of people who are religious. And they think, well, I'm religious. My folks are religious. That's good enough. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven. He that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Done that? Or have you got confidence you're okay right now? Your mom and dad were Christians. They raised you to be whatever it was, Methodist, Baptist, Presbyterian, Catholic. That's okay. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? Then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. In just a few minutes, we're going to offer the invitation. And if you've not provided for the future, building something that will last through the ages, you need to think about this. Oh, yes, you're a believer in Christ. Yes, you probably lead a pretty good life. But have you really thought about your future? Or is your thinking very unrealistic? Some people only live in the future. My goodness. Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain. Oh, that's all they can think about. Next year. When I retire. When the business comes to fruition. When the baby's born. When I get married. Whereas you know not what shall be on. For what is your life? It's even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. For that ye ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. But now ye rejoice in your boastings. Do you realize that? Your planning without considering God's will is boasting. You think you are so smart and so good that that you're going to accomplish something in the future. And you don't think, if the Lord wills, I'll be able to do this. You're not giving him any credit at all. All such rejoicing is evil. Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good, and doeth it not, to him it's sin. Now, question. Do you know that you need to take him into account tonight? And provide for the future tonight, to build for the ages tonight, and to continue throughout your life? He did his best for his own generation, but he built thinking beyond himself. Command those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty, nor to trust in uncertain riches, but of the living God, who gives us richly all things to enjoy. Let them do good, that they may be rich in good works, ready to give, willing to share, storing up for themselves a good foundation for the time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life. And so Jacob built for the here and now, but he was thinking beyond himself for the future, for his children and his future. Jacob's work never ceased to be a blessing. Thousands of years, it was always a blessing. In Revelation 14, verse 13, I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Write, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to think that the things we do with our families, that'll follow. When I'm dead and gone, I hope my children will pass on some of the things that I've taught them to their children. Don't you? And their children to their children. I hope that my works will follow me throughout this life. In this church, I don't know how long this particular building's going to last. I don't know whether there'll be a church here 100 years from now, but I'd like to think that the influence that this congregation has had on people will endure, don't you? In your financial life, you do that. You're planning to leave something. I know we all joke about it. Dick Green used to have a bumper that said he was spending his children's inheritance, but I bet he didn't. It was just a bumper sticker, or bumper. It wasn't a sticker. He had the plate. He spent for it in metal. But you're doing this. You're planning for your children. Dave and Rebecca back there. Why in the world is Rebecca Milliner Welch working at Butler? She could make a lot more money if she'd go somewhere else, I bet. She's pretty talented. But she discovered something. As long as she works at Butler, her kids, if they're not just absolute idiots, hold up your hands, will be able to go to Butler University for free. So she keeps working there. Why? She's thinking about her kids' future. Are you thinking about your kids' future? And providing for it? There's going to be tomorrow. And I want them to be able to go further and do more than I was able. I think we all think that. Spiritually, our works follow us. Jacob was not without his reward. Finally, last point I want to bring to you is his well brought comfort to Jesus. As he sat on the parapet, Matthew 26, the king will answer and say to them, Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. we have a responsibility to help and assist one another. He will also say to those on the left hand, depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not take me in, naked, and you did not clothe me, sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. They only thought about themselves. They didn't think about anybody else. Then they also will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not minister to you? Then he will answer them, saying, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did not do it to one of the least of these, did not do it to me. You know, we have this goofy notion that somehow or another, if Jesus were here tonight, we'd invite him home to dinner with us. We'd say, would you like to sleep in my bed? And sleep as late as you want tomorrow. And what do you want the temperature of the house to be like? And would you like to borrow my car? Or I'll give you my car. That's what we do to Jesus. But I know people who imagine that, who have never once entertained anybody else in their home, who've never exhibited any charity to the sick or the hungry or the thirsty or the naked. They only thought about themselves, but they imagined if it were Jesus, then they would do something. He says, these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. So the simple question that presents itself before you. That was Jacob's well, Jesus there. What about you today? Have you prepared? Have you built, and are you building for the ages? Are you building something that'll bring comfort to your brethren? Or do you imagine that somehow I'd help Jesus, but you've separated your Jesus from your brethren entirely? If you're not a Christian, you should prepare. Don't think about your marriage. Don't think about your school. Don't think about your business if you haven't put him first. Because that's to prepare for the future. Come while we stand and sing.